Now, the really disturbing thing is the news that 22 veterans a day are dying from suicide. They're completely frustrated. They're facing exactly the same thing that I did. And you can bet all of them, the stories that you're hearing from all of them, they are indeed on a bucket full of psychotropic drugs. I mean, 2/3 of the medication in all the hospitals in North America are psychotropic drugs. And they're being over-prescribed in an effort to suppress the population. These suicides have to stop. They have no, they're over-medicating them to keep them quiet because they don't know what to do with them. All of a sudden, this problem, they've been sweeping it under the carpet, and it's coming up, years later, and that speaks to the very nature of the most serious kind of brain injury. We've all seen people recovering from a bullet to the brain, but one little tap on the head, a little whiplash, and next thing you know, 6 months later, a year later, the person's life goes into a downhill spiral, and next thing you know, they've killed themselves. And of course, the insurance companies and the doctors say, well, this can't be related to the original insult. This is 6 months later. But as I said, like, one of the biggest problems we have with head injuries, post-traumatic stress disorder, is they are sweeping these so-called minor head injuries under the carpet. There's a special relationship between the hypothalamus and the pituitary. When you have a little incident of whiplash and you get a microscopic tear in that hypothalamus, it can't do the one job it needs to do, to supply hormones to the next gland just down the street there, the pituitary. After a while, the pituitary breaks down and life ceases. It's as simple as that. And sometimes it takes 6 months, sometimes it takes a couple of years for it to break down. But all these cases are suddenly coming up. They've been sweeping them under the carpet in the general population with car accidents, and now the enormous amounts of war veterans coming back with head trauma. They just keep sweeping them up, and now the government has a panic attack because they really don't know what to do with it. The only option they have is to over-medicate everybody, to keep them quiet until what? Until they kill themselves, and then the system, the way it's set up, the only help that they can get are psychologists and psychiatrists at $150 an hour. You need 50 sessions before you can start to do anything. That is never going to happen. If Big Pharma can't make any money on managing these injuries, they're going to suppress any free treatment, like emotional freedom therapy. Millions of people are using it, not because they can't afford the $150 an hour, because emotional freedom therapy, EFT, or tapping as it's become known as, is a better therapy than any of the mainstream therapies. And it's free, and that's the problem. Okay, hold on. At the end of the day, my impression is everybody's terrified. Where's the newspaper? This story with St. Michael's Hospital, the top trauma doctor, Dr. Donna Ochterlony, went on CBC, and she said that she personally signed off on 2,400 treatment plans for people involved in car accidents. Many of these people were catastrophically impaired. And the outrageous thing was every single treatment plan, every single one, was denied under the new terms and laws in the Insurance Act. As if that wasn't bad enough. Basically, it meant these families were going to be torn apart if they didn't get the insurance benefits that they paid for, they have to pay for it themselves. They'll have to sell their homes, their properties, retirement stocks, whatever they have. And they were the real victims. But where was the newspapers? Where was CBC? I castigated CBC publicly on my blog, and I told the guy, you know, why did you take the story down? He said he didn't have room on his server. Right. Okay, stop. And of course, the most disturbing thing is nobody complained about it. Where's the millions of Canadians that used to be would be up in arms if there was any kind of violation of our freedom of speech, of our civil rights? It's like we turned into zombies. We're all docile, and we accepted that. And there's no chance that this just happened at one hospital at St. Michael's. It's happening all across the country. It's happening in every hospital, and the information is being suppressed. People are terrified. Why am I doing it? Well, after you look at the file and after you look at the fact that my fentanyl, a very powerful narcotic, was bumped up by 400% one fine day, at a time when I was on 15 other medications, at a time when my oxygen saturation was at 82%. Redline is considered 90%. Okay, I was on death's doorstep. So, and I have plenty of doctors from around the world that concurred. Somebody was trying to do something to me, and I got the message loud and clear. Now they have a much bigger problem, okay, because I sent my surveillance out on thumb drives all over the world. I fully expect that they're not going to stop their little plan. As you can see, this is a very complicated and a very dangerous topic, and I'm not going to try to convey all this information in one session. Next week I'm going to talk about the involvement of the insurance companies and their cohorts. For example, the first thing that happened was they assigned an occupational therapist, not one of the 10 that were available in Owen Sound, but one that lived 5 hours away, a 10-hour return trip at $1,000 a pop. Now, why do you suppose my adjuster brought this person in? Okay, stop. So I want to talk a little bit about an incident that happened with Doc. I was there on an appointment after my accident. My wife Suzanne was there with me, and at one point he turned to me and he looked me right in the eye and he said, it would be better if I had a massive heart attack or a massive stroke for a merciful ending. And you know, he said this right in front of my wife, and then he said, oh, I'm going to need a quadruple bypass and all the rest of it. And I went to Newmarket to see one of the top cardiologists, and he ran the scope up to my heart and he says, hey pal, your heart's in perfect condition and your arteries are in perfect condition, and why are you on these 30 medications here? I said, well, you know, my doctor told me that I needed them. So that was one thing. And another thing, while we were in the hospital, one of these ghouls in the emergency department made some sort of weird comment about, he thought my wife was my daughter, and then he even wrote about it in his report that it seemed to be some sort of, she looked like way too young for me, something like that. Well, buddy, we've been married for 40 years. We have 4 adult children, and I can understand the way I look, because the way it was a direct result of the treatment I had. It got me up to 336 pounds. So what's up with that? What's really going on here? Okay. All right, now I'm not trying to draw attention to myself. I don't need it. And I think I've got the situation under control. I did secret video surveillance of the entire sordid mess. 6 of the top neurologists in the province of Ontario could find nothing wrong with me. They said it was in my head. And then another group has found me to be catastrophically impaired. Duh, I guess. I've presented with exactly the same symptoms the entire time. So how do you get disparities like that if the system isn't corrupt? Another reason why I'm putting my story out there is for everybody to compare their stories. I've talked to hundreds of people about issues like this, and they all say the same thing, especially about their parents and about their grandparents and their experience with the medical system. Everybody's on at least a handful of the standard medication, Prozac, Lipitor, Metformin, all the things that are really making the mill. And I've heard plenty of stories where in a last desperate act, people just stopped taking their medication, just like I did. And guess what? We all got healthy. I lost 100 pounds. I don't have diabetes type 2 anymore, everything that goes with it, hypertension, all the rest of it. I still have my brain injury. I still have my spinal cord injuries. But, okay, I lost track. So I'll be putting out material over the next couple of weeks, and we'll let you decide what's going on behind the scenes here in Canada.